So this week we read Parshat Tavo, and there's a lot to talk about in Tavo, as is true for every Parsha. One of the things is that in Tavo we have a section that we call the Klalot, the curses. I'll talk about that later in the week, but it's something that happens in this Parsha, and it happens toward the end of Vayikra, of Leviticus, where the consequences of not following the covenant are spelled out, and it's deeply unpleasant, so much so that the Torah reader hushes their voice when they're reading. We read it carefully but quietly so that we get it right and we don't traumatize our entire community who's gathered to learn Torah. We'll talk about that later in this week. But right now I wanted to start with a more positive part of the Parsha, the gratitude part. In fact, the whole thing could be described as a reminder to have gratitude. Even the harsh warnings could be seen as a way of remembering to not miss the blessings right before us. Because when you don't notice the blessings, maybe that's the definition of a curse, to go through a gorgeous life, even with hardships, and not notice every breath. I'm in a very special location right now. I'm sitting at the LaFell School in Hartsdale, New York, where children are going to begin their year very soon. The teachers are all here. Some of the sports activities are beginning, and this is an extraordinarily holy place, but if I didn't know that, I would just walk through it, drive past it, not see the miracle of this place as it has been for my family, as it has been actually for me. I did my student teaching here. When I was in rabbinical school and getting my master's in education, I came and learned from master teachers here. It was the Schechter of Westchester at the time, and now it's called the LaFell School. But this gratitude practice is something that you can miss when you're along your way. That's actually what happens in this week's Parsha. Ki Tavo begins with Ki Tavo el haaretz, when you arrive in the land, and it speaks to a generation that will already be located in the Promised Land. Of course, it's offered from the other side of the Jordan, because when you are not yet in a land of promise, you would never take it for granted that you made it. You keep on hearing from your ancestors for 2 generations in the desert that you're going to make it to the Promised Land. God promised, God promised, God promised. And when you're not yet there, you know that you're not yet there. And you imagine when you finally stand on the soil where you can have the dignity of self-determination, where you can farm and grow and learn and raise your children with more safety than we could in the desert. There's no way to miss those blessings. But what happens when you make it? What happens when you make it? As Diane and Stanley are celebrating their 51st wedding anniversary just yesterday. This is a moment where Moses is telling us, when you make it, don't forget how hard the journey was. When you enter the land and you raise your crops, the first fruits that you raise, you bring to the priest and you offer them to the priest, meaning to the holy. You give them away. Can you imagine? A journey of 40 years, 2 generations, and all the ancestors, including enslavement in Egypt. Can you imagine finally settling down and planting fruits and raising fruits, and the first fruits you grow, tradition tells you give them away? Have you ever opened a restaurant? I never have, but I know in the back or right behind the register in certain restaurants, people who've created the restaurant, who own it, place dollar bills or the first money they've earned framed right behind the register. Can you imagine if the first time, after all the work it takes to start an enterprise, you're told to give that money away? The first things you raise, the first products of your labor, the first fruits of your labor. It's so challenging to imagine. And yet that's what we're told to do. We're told while we're still on the journey that one day it's going to take effort to remember it. So that's what gratitude looks like. Look over my shoulder. Just look at these trees. I didn't plant them. I'm so grateful somebody did. I want to show you a very special tree, because my son's graduating class here planted this tree in memory of their classmate. Sometimes you can miss the message because you weren't there when it began. But right over my shoulder over here, you see that little ribbon? The ribbon is marking a little tree. And that tree was planted in honor and memory of a young man named Gavri Benson. My son's class lost a classmate in Gavri. And I remember connecting with all of you and sharing that moment of loss with our community. And one day, children and adults will pass by that special tree, just as you and I might pass by these trees, and not know that there was a journey that led to the growth of this, to the planting of this, to the nurturing of this, to the memory that's meant to be held by something that is alive and growing. So I bless us, friends, as we read Ki Tavo, and we hear the wisdom of Moses, who knows that at some point we're going to forget that we were on the journey and think that we've always arrived. We haven't always arrived. That's what arrival is. It's just one more step in a journey of moving on, growing, aging, experiencing, learning, on this holy path that we are on towards the high holidays, which is its own chronological version of a promise. May we be blessed, friends, never to forget the journey that we have shared and to show gratitude for having arrived at this point, knowing that there will be a next moment where we'll be called to do the same. Let's sing our way into a good day, friends. Ya la 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 la, today ya la la la, today ya la 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 la, ay ay la la la. Bless you, friends. See you tomorrow.